BBC buried some of its best work under scheduling blunders, PR flops, and flat-out indifference. They tried to downplay the one that swept the Emmys, panicked over the one that dared show Jane Eyre with actual sexual tension, and nearly killed North and South by promoting it like a knockoff. These are the 10 greatest BBC period dramas ever made, ranked, and half of them were sabotaged by the very people who made them. This one turned out better than it had any right to. Ruth Wilson had never led anything before. BBC almost passed on her entirely, wanted a safer choice, but she ended up walking away with a breakout performance. You watch it now, and it still holds up. Wilson's Jane is fierce and interior, never showy. And then there's Toby Stephens, giving a Rochester so sweaty it actually sparked backlash. Some fans hated it. Even one BBC exec reportedly said the show had more sexual tension than a Jane Eyre should. That didn't stop it from becoming one of the most popular Bronte adaptations BBC has ever exported to the US. 14 episodes, multiple timelines, and one of the most ambitious Dickens adaptations BBC has ever done. Little Dorrit had everything: prestige writing, direction, performances, and yet it is still underrated. The scheduling was a mess. It aired during a reshuffle, with no promotion. Some episodes went out at strange hours. Nobody in the UK paid much attention. Meanwhile, it swept the Emmys, 7 wins, including Outstanding Miniseries. Claire Foy, long before The Crown, anchors the whole thing with a performance that's genuinely moving. She plays Amy Dorrit, born and raised in debtor's prison, caring for her father while the outside world shifts around them. The series doesn't try to modernize Dickens. It honors the scope of his story. Social critique, grim realities, and all. The production design is stunning. The tone is harsh when it needs to be. And still, somehow, Little Dorrit remains one of the BBC's most underseen period dramas. When this aired in 1998, the press went after it before the first episode even dropped. Star Anna Friel had just come off Brookside, and the tabloids were gleeful. Soap star does Dickens became the punchline, but Friel proved them wrong. She gave a great performance that aged beautifully. The story, one of Dickens' most tangled, is handled with real care. BBC threw money at it. Massive sets, a sprawling cast, rich costuming, and still, the audience didn't turn up. Maybe the tone was too dark. Maybe the marketing didn't land. Either way, they never gave it a prestige rerun slot. Today, Our Mutual Friend holds up far better than a lot of what did get attention in the 90s. It just never got the spotlight it deserved. This one had everything going for it. Judi Dench, Eileen Atkins, Imelda Staunton. It was basically the Avengers of British period drama. Based on 3 separate Elizabeth Gaskell novels, this series folds them into a single, tightly written story set in a rural English village in the 1840s. The town is holding on to its old ways as long as it can, but the railway is coming. Progress is closing in. And while they're busy keeping up appearances and swapping gossip, change shows up in the form of a young doctor with brand new medical ideas. Richard E. Grant once joked that in British period drama, the real star is the wallpaper. In Cranford, it's the cast: Dench, Atkins, Staunton, and a dozen more at the top of their game. They carry it without ever needing to raise their voices. This was supposed to be The Crown Jewel, another Elizabeth Gaskell adaptation handled by the period drama guy himself, Andrew Davies. Lavish sets, detailed costumes, a first-rate cast, and a central performance from Justine Waddell that critics called luminous. It follows a young woman named Molly navigating a minefield of step-family drama, town gossip, and romantic complications. It's elegant on the surface, but Davies layers the script with all kinds of tension. There's a catch, though. Gaskell died before finishing the novel, but Davies came in with a final act that fits the tone perfectly. You'd never know it wasn't Gaskell's own. Despite the quality, Wives and Daughters never got the push it deserved. It aired the same year the BBC was rerunning Pride and Prejudice and got buried in the noise. Critics barely noticed it, even though it was one of the most expensive and technically impressive dramas they made that decade. Waddell didn't return to acting after this. that fueled burnout rumors, even though she never addressed them publicly. This is the one that kicked off the BBC literary boom of the 90s. George Eliot's sprawling novel, adapted into 6 episodes and shot entirely on location in Stamford. No fake sets, real buildings, real interiors. Every frame looks like a painting. Juliette Aubrey plays Dorothea, a headstrong young woman trying to do some kind of good in the world. She ends up married to a walking corpse of a man. Meanwhile, Douglas Hodge plays Lydgate, an idealistic doctor trying to bring modern medicine to a town that doesn't want it. Their dreams unravel in slow motion across a web of marriages, betrayals, debts, and reputations. The cast is loaded with strong character actors, and Aubrey in particular got rave reviews. But despite that, the BBC never gave her another lead. The show didn't rerun for 15 years. They treated it like a one-off, even though it basically launched the template for every big-budget British drama that followed. First aired in 2001, The Way We Live Now is not what people expect from Anthony Trollope. If you're thinking polite drawing room chatter and Barsetshire niceties, forget it. This is a cynical takedown of financial greed and social rot. At the center is Augustus Melmotte, an Austrian Jewish financier who storms into London's money markets and aristocratic circles, trying to rebrand himself as an English country gentleman. David Yates directed this one. Yes, that David Yates, who later went on to helm half the Harry Potter franchise, and his approach keeps Trollope's remorseless logic intact while juggling a mess of subplots and side characters. At the time, the BBC was nervous. They thought it was too dark, too much corporate corruption, too much decadence. And remember, this aired right after 9/11. Viewers weren't ready for a show this blunt, but today it's seen as one of the most brutally accurate portrayals of late-stage capitalism the BBC has ever produced. Based on Elizabeth Gaskell's novel, North and South tells the story of a middle-class woman from the cultured South who gets tangled up with a rough-edged Northern industrialist. On paper, BBC thought it was just another Pride and Prejudice knockoff. They barely promoted it. But they were wrong. This is the ultimate slow burn. The social commentary bites, the industrial setting is gritty and real, and Richard Armitage as Thornton didn't just deliver, he detonated. That brooding stare alone crashed the BBC's message board after the finale. Literally, the server went down. Critics sneered at first. Pride and Prejudice in a Factory was the headline, but the fans knew better. The DVD flew off shelves. Armitage became a full-blown heartthrob overnight. The BBC had no idea what they had on their hands. This is the gold standard. Full stop. Every Jane Austen adaptation since has lived in its shadow. Colin Firth, Jennifer Ely, Andrew Davies' script. Everything just hit. But at the time, nobody thought it was special. The budget was tight. The cast wasn't made up of big names. BBC execs thought they were just ticking the Do Austen Again box. And then came the lake scene. Firth in the wet shirt. That one moment rewrote pop culture. It turned a solid period drama into a phenomenon. The series became so big, it overshadowed everything that came after. Internally, some BBC producers even called it a creative trap. Nothing else measured up. This one is a monster, in the best way. Charles Dickens' sprawling attack on the British legal system finally got the treatment it deserved. Andrew Davies adapted it. The BBC gave it money, gave it creative freedom, and the result is pure prestige. Bleak House doesn't play like a costume drama. It plays like a thriller. Tight cuts, handheld cameras, relentless pacing. Purists hated it at first. Then it pulled in new viewers and basically revived Dickens for television. The cast is stacked. Gillian Anderson, Charles Dance, Dennis Lawson, Carey Mulligan. It even won a Peabody and landed 10 Emmy nominations. Anderson later said this was the most fun she'd had in years. That says something. It aired in weird chunks, 2 episodes a week, almost like a soap. But it worked. The BBC didn't just make Dickens relevant again. They made him unmissable.